I'm glad to open this plenary session, the second one for today, with speech, with a presentation of Meri Kulmala and Anna Fomina. Meri Kulmala is a professor in Helsinki, in University of Helsinki, and Anna Fomina is also. Anna, are you also working in Helsinki University, right? Also?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And Meri and Anna have implemented a very interesting project, and they published a number of texts, including one very good book, and they are planning to tell us about the results, outcomes of this research projects today. Thank you very much. We are looking forward to listening to your talk. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Lena, for this kind invitation. Even if it's a bit challenging timing, at least at the University of Helsinki, since everyone else seems to be on vacation already, so we are still presenting. But anyway, we are very honored.
Thank you very much, especially in this situation, Meri.
Yeah, so we are very honored to take part in this very interesting event to present our collective research with Anna, as Lena said, which is actually a part of the bigger or larger research projects, one led by me on kind of a more generally on the ongoing child welfare reform in Russia. But what we are going to talk today is actually a part of another bigger project that focused on well-being of youth in the Arctic region. And our task in that project with Anna was to focus on young adults who have experienced or they have been in alternative care and who live in the Russian side of the Arctic. And actually we have such a division of work today, or division of labor with Anna, that I will start with presenting our kind of a bigger questions, that why and how we've been conducting this research, and then Anna will continue with our empirical findings, and then kind of hand it back to me in the end for some kind of a short conclusions as well. And we are doing this presentation in two different locations. So I'm in Helsinki and Anna is St. Petersburg. So our title presentation is titled today, Planning for the Future, Future Orientation, Agency and Self-Efficacy of Young Adults Leaving Care in the Russian Arctic. So as the title shows, we have been focusing on future expectations and plans of care leavers, so young people who leave different forms of alternative care in the Russian Arctic. So by care leaver, we mean young adults who transition to independent living from different forms of alternative care. So they might be children's homes, foster families, or the so-called children villages, or they have a kind of experience a combination of those forms of alternative care. And we are actually looking at this kind of a transition, or better to say perhaps that also kind of a development of aftercare system in the context of the massive child welfare reform that has been going on from 2010 onwards in Russia. And I guess that many of you know that in addition to kind of reforming children homes and foster family system, one of the focuses of the reform has been on aftercare as well, that how we could better kind of socially adapt children who are in care, and especially to support those young adults who transition to their independent living. And now it's obligatory that those new family service centers have a department working with the care leavers. So this kind of our research has happened in this bigger context. And we have been asking that what goals and expectations do these young adults living alternative care have for their future, or do they plan at all? And if so, how far does their thinking extend, and how, this is important, that how they see their chances to influence their own future. And we also, in our analysis, we pay attention to the question that what are the major factors in this particular context that influence on their planning. So a few words about planning and why we think that it is important more generally concerning young people. So we think that thinking and planning for the future are important for several reasons. First, young adults are faced with a number of normative age-specific tasks which require thinking about the future. So young people are forced to think about that, about kind of transitioning to independent housing, independent living, where to study, what would I like to be in the future. So kind of a professional choices as well. And secondly, why it is important that these kind of future-oriented plans and decisions crucially influence their later adult life. And also research has shown that planning and future planning, like questions that what I would like to be or become, are quite important part of identity formation of young adults. Also, much of research has shown that family context influences how young people orient to their future and how they engage in planning. So in this kind of a particular case of care leavers, so these young adults who have lacked of stable family context, this kind of a journey to adulthood undertakes against a backdrop of difficult life experiences and sometimes amidst unsupportive family relationship also. So we kind of think that it is even more important for these young adults to plan in comparison to so-called ordinary adults, young adults who have their families. So research kind of has spoken about yo-yo transition, that young people can make decision and return to their birth families and so on. But this, as I think all of us understands, that these young adults are in very particular situation concerning that they might have not a place where to return. So why we think that it is kind of important to look at planning in this context of young adults leaving care institutions or foster families is exactly that kind of an ability to plan has been seen kind of increasing, or future orientation and planning has been seen increasing kind of ability to cope with hardships in the future life. So we kind of think that because they have had such difficult life experiences, we can expect some challenges also in the future. So kind of being able to orient towards future kind of increases their kind of chances to overcome some challenges. So an ability to imagine for the future with a sense of control, of kind of a sensing that I can have an impact on my own future, can be considered as a resource on its own right. So this kind of, if young person develops such a mastery over one's life, it connects with resilience, as I said, that it promotes the ability to cope with the hardships. So in our study, we analyze how these young adults orientate towards their future, and especially how they see their own ability to control over their future. And as said, we are interested also that what factors interconnect with this ability, so we don't think that these are only individual choices, but they are very much interconnected with many structural constraints and sometimes enabling structures as well. So in our research, we have applied subjective agency as a key concept. So with agency, we refer to an ability to plan and make related decisions. And as said, we even more focus on subjective agency that we understand as a perceived capacity and perceived expectation of what lives holds in store. So it's kind of a own sense of agentic abilities. So kind of a young people do think that I have influence over my own life. And as said, we think that these young people, they plan and dream and whatever, so they exercise their agency in both enabling and constraining structures and also in relationship to other people. So as said, that we don't consider that it is kind of only up to them to exercise their agency, but it's relational in terms of other people, but it is much, as we will show, constrained by the structural factors as well. And research has also shown that vulnerability somewhat limits agency, but anyhow, we tend to think that even those without that much power, they have the ability to make decisions, but we have to understand that especially these young adults, when they do decisions over their life, they might have very severe consequences of those choices. So as said, our central question lies in this self-understanding of a young caregiver about her or his ability at the moment to have influence for the future. And we heavily think that this kind of ability at the moment, kind of a present agency to influence for the future, is very much informed by the past life experience. So our understanding of agency is temporal as well, and we refer to Emirbayer and Mische's concept of projectivity, that is an ability to imagine alternative future trajectories and make difference to their actions. So it's kind of a future-oriented agency is a kind of a set resource of its own. So it's called like a power of looking ahead. And now coming closer to our investigation, so we have earlier with Anya and Zhana Chernova investigated these young adults concerning their educational choice, and then we identified two strategies, that there was kind of a long-term planning with game together with what we called life course agencies. So these people were very much engaged in planning their future. But another strategy was not to plan strategy, as we named it, and it was usually exercised together, what we call pragmatic agency, which was more kind of temporary proximate decisions that those people needed to do concerning their educational choices. And we kind of built on that investigation, and here we created two future orientation categories, that those people who orient towards the future, so who plan and dream ahead, and those young adults who didn't show that much orientation, or those young adults who even refused to plan. So we will, Anna will soon continue with these categories and subcategories what we found in our investigation. Just shortly to say about our empirical design, we have interviewed, or we have for 43 interviews with young adults who have experienced alternative care and who have now transitioned to their independent living. So our research team, we interviewed 15 care leavers, among which we recruited 6 co-researchers. So then kind of from there, the young people took the kind of interviewing process for themselves, and these so-called co-researchers, young co-researchers, they conducted altogether 28 interviews with their peer young adults transitioning or having transitions to independent living. We do not unfortunately have time to go into this methodology now in detail, but we just shortly to say that we wanted to engage in such core and peer research for several reasons. We really wanted to involve young adults themselves because we think that they are the best experts by experience for their kind of life trajectories and also the support system. And we also wanted to overcome some power asymmetries in there. So you can all imagine that for instance, me kind of interviewing a young adult coming from such kind of circumstances is a bit kind of a challenging situation. So we thought that it would be kind of better if those young people engage in discussion between themselves. And we have been conducting interviews in 2 regions in Northwest Russia, as we say, in the Russian Arctic, and we've been doing this in very close collaboration with local child welfare NGOs who kind of supported as a local support or focal point for those young people who conducted the interviews and who were interviewed. And this is just to summarize our kind of data or the interviews in numbers. So as said, we had altogether 43 interviews, and they were divided as you see in the table like this, that 26 were in the region 1 and 17 in the region 2. And here you can, in the second table, this OG refers to orientation category. So you can see that those were quite evenly kind of divided into 2 groups, that 17 were young adults who engaged in planning, while 20 of them didn't. And then we had those 6 that it was difficult to say. But anyhow, I now hand it over to Anna, who will continue with our findings.
Okay, thank you, Meri. As Meri has already said, we divided all the interviews with young adults into 2 different like big orientation to the future. In the first group, there are those oriented towards the future who planned and dream ahead about their future, while to the second group, there were those young adults who show no or little future orientation or even refuse to plan. So both of each group, we divided to 4 different subcategories. You can see it on the slide. And Meri, please switch to the other slide. And I would like to describe all of them. So the first subcategory in the group with future orientation is long-term planning with strong self-efficacy. What are the main characteristics for this mode? This mode typically interconnected with the fact that these young adults had someone who believed in them, with whom they could talk and discuss their future and their plans, and those significant adults who can support their choice. And the other important characteristic, Meri, please switch, that is those young adults demonstrate strong identity construction in terms of future profession, and those young adults often knew well what they want to be in the future, and they made a logical, educational, and related decisions. Also, these we have a message in the chat. Do you hear me well?
Yeah, I can hear you very well.
Okay, then I continue. So young adults in this subcategory demonstrate identity agency, a more or less conscious act to make use of one's identity in complicate social norms typically related to this identity. It could be positive or negative. For example, they clearly understand and they can imagine the picture of what they want to be when they grow up. And also this mode are interconnected with the label of negative identity agency, and it is usually connected with the birth parents. For example, some of young adults told us that they won't be as their relatives or their parents. The second subcategory is dreaming like planning, and these young adults, Meri, please switch the slide. These young adults engage in planning in a more dreamlike manner, and they shared a common a positive tone when they talk about their present and about their future. And they showed more or less self-confidence in terms of having impact on their own life. And also, we assume that positive life attitude combined with a daydreaming is such a resource to certain extent, especially when compared to those below discussed young adults who had a highly cynical way to dream and to speak about their future. The third mode is unfeasible dreams. It's a kind of difficult to explain how we understood that these dreams were unfeasible, but we relied on the context of their narratives and intonation, how they spoke about their future and plans. Sometimes they speak with a cynical intonation. And in this orientation subcategory, their narration was typical characterized with inconsistencies. And obviously, unrelated issues tend to be related in these narratives. Moreover, these young adults narrated little ability to control the circumstances of which their future depends. The fourth and the last in the future-oriented group subcategories is planning with constant obstacles. We identified several young adults who made plans and engaged with the effort to make those plans happen, and yet the external circumstances over and over again ruined those plans. Also, we decided that such a situation are ideal typical cases of restricted or constrained agency. Now I would like to tell you about the second big group and tell you about those young adults who are not planning or has a little plans for their future. No plans but current life satisfaction category. What those adults shared in common was low future orientation, but at the same time they engaged with a somewhat optimistic mode of life. We've heard a lot from this category that everything will be fine. They often saw that one cannot plan too much for the future, but anyhow things tend to go well in the end. They didn't express strong self-efficacy in terms of being able to have an impact on their own life, but since they were pretty satisfied with their current life, they had no reason to think that something will go wrong in the future. Such an optimistic attitude can be a sign of the certain level of resourcefulness and resilience. The second mode of this group is planning is no worse. More typically, unwillingness to plan was expressed by rejecting future planning because of this belief of having control of their own life. Young people in this mode, they demonstrated that they didn't want to make a plan because everything can change very fast. These young adults share in common is a weak sense of mastery of the things in their lives, and the above discussed unfeasible plans. The orientation was often connected with little life management and self-regulation more generally. The rejection of planning was sometimes tightly connected with the cynical to talk about the future. And the third mode, Meri, no. And again, the third, no plans with the civilist self-reliance. Young people in this subcategory demonstrate lack of trust to anyone's help, responsibility for their own development of safety, and they express mistrust towards others as a potential sources of support. And these young adults saw life being a day-to-day survival in which self-reliance was essential, and negative association with the help from the system, and obviously connected with earlier experiences and untrustworthy parents. The last mode, no big plans, but damn ordinary life. Several young adults refused to plan, but just wanted some stability. They didn't ask much. They did not plan big, but they just wanted a quiet, ordinary life. What is in common is to this subgroup is somewhat pessimistic attitude. They wanted just a normal life without faith that it will come. And these people either are not completely lacking of agency. For instance, in literature, we found a great explanation for this rejection of planning. the future. So they also didn't believe in support, and they and such kind of rejection is also agency, but a bit passive one. Meri, would you like to continue with the macro, meso, and micro levels, or would you like me to continue with the levels? Meri?
I don't know, I thought that you would be continuing, but it doesn't matter for me. I just have some difficulties with the slides. It doesn't.
Okay, we if you could return to one slide back.
I'm trying.
Okay, yeah, macro level.
Yeah.
Okay.
So would you like me to continue, or
yeah, it would be nice. Thank you.
Okay, so then we said, as said in the beginning, that we kind of wanted to understand not only that how these people plan and how they don't plan sometimes, and we wanted to see about kind of factors that interconnect with future orientation or not to plan mode at different levels. And here in this presentation, since I think we are running out of time quite soon, we don't have time to go into details, but basically one could say that the Russian state policy can be considered as enabling factors. So there are many kinds of social support in terms of free education, free housing, and things like that, which really kind of enable these young adults to go further with their plans. So it allows them to study, it allows them to have a place. But anyhow, since these people kind of face quite stigmatized, I would say, public image, it kind of limits, or it constrains their agency in any way. So in our earlier research, we found that many people, or many of these young adults, where anyhow they go to study and they start their independent living, but that is very much kind of instructed by the professional to certain paths. So they tend to choose certain professions and certain schools because there is this kind of image that they cannot probably do better. And now when we analyze these young people in this paper, we noticed that they very much appreciated many kind of state support that they had, but they found it very stigmatizing. So we have one interview discussion here in which Asia tells that she was so embarrassed. She needed that support, but she was so embarrassed about that. So we kind of think that at the macro level, there are enabling factors, but there are too many constraints as well. We do not have time to go in detail to this meso level, but I just kind of shortly say about our kind of most significant finding, that it was actually with meso level we refer to regional infrastructure, that what kind of opportunities one has to study, and also that how the alternative care is arranged in that particular region. And here we found kind of the most enabling factor, the fact that if region has kind of a developed NGO sector, which very much kind of provides more individual approach to these young adults. So that was one of the most significant. So it doesn't matter that what kind of schools you have in the region, but if you have a support system that kind of helps to develop such agency over one's life, which clearly, of course, connects to the micro level. So if we looked at those micro, meso, and micro levels, and how different factors at those levels interconnected with the agency, we found that micro level was, of course, most important. So if we look at those cases who kind of really engage in planning with kind of a strong self-efficacy, so these young people have faith that they can affect over their own life. It always happened in some kind of a support by significant adult. It wasn't important, that much important, was it foster parent or birth parent or some social worker or whomever, but if they had someone with whom who listened to them, their needs, and with whom they could kind of in a trustworthy relationship negotiate about their plans. So that kind of was the kind of way for kind of increased agency in kind of a mode of shared agency. So in the end, we do not want to say that it is fault or failure of one kind of a young adult at whom they engage in practicing their agency and how they engage in planning, but it is all very much constrained by the external factors in there. So as said in the beginning, that our understanding of agency is temporal, so we've really kind of found evidence that the present agency for the future interconnects with the past experiences. I also already said that the most important factor in terms of developing such an agency was to have a trusted someone around. And here, as Anna explained, that identity agency mattered a lot. So if they really knew whom I want to be or whom I don't want to be, it kind of made big difference for their plan. And it's of course interconnected with the fact that kind of developing such self-esteem that you know what you want is usually happens in supportive environment. But as Anna also said, that we didn't treat this kind of a not to plan strategy as being without any agency, but we conceptualized it more like a everyday resistance in agency in terms of resistance, and we saw it more as a logical continuum. So it was perhaps inconsistency that was the very stable element in the lives of these young adults. So they kind of had learned not to trust on the future. So it wasn't in that way kind of their own choice, but it was very much restricted by their past experiences. So in the end, if we are looking now the Russian system, which is under development at the moment and under big reformation, but still at the moment we tend to think that it's quite generous in material terms, and it enables a lot for these young adults, but what they lack of is kind of individual support and emotional support that would treat them as agents of over their own lives. Okay, thanks. I will stop here.
Thank you so much, Meri and Anna. It's fascinating research, and you presented the whole typology of whatever life planners, so to say, the young caregivers. Sorry, did you interview those youngsters who lived in foster care?
Yeah.
Yeah, just for those who came later, maybe. And you show that they have quite different plan strategies, so to say. Now, I also very much liked how you showed that it has a certain impact from the macro level and meso level, of course. Dear colleagues, we have several questions here in chat, and I also ask you who can speak in your microphone, please do. Okay, I will read first the question from the chat. Dear Dr. Kulmala and Anna, thank you for presenting such an interesting research and methodology, writes Anna Leontieva. I understand that you do no cohort studies, but I wonder what is your opinion on generational changes in planning, if any. There is a common notion that today adolescents with their mobile devices exercise less independence and skills in urban environment that their parents did. Meanwhile, the subjective sense of agency among general population might be even higher. Do you agree with that? Is there such a trend around the Arctic region societies? If yes, do you think it brings resources or risks to vulnerable young adults?
About planning and planning as generational issue, I think we agree a lot that there is a huge change how kind of a different generations kind of how they see the word of planning, and we would say that the age group that these young people with whom we did research and whom we interviewed, kind of it's a tendency to kind of plan less straightforwardly their kind of a professional future and so on, more generally. So that's not only in the Russian context, or that's not only in the Arctic context, but it's kind of a more generational issue. And what I wanted to refer in the beginning, so it seems that this generation is more about kind of developing their different kinds of skills, and research, as said, speaks about this kind of yo-yo transitions, that they don't want to do decisions right away. So I could go there, and then I could come back, and then I could go again there, and kind of have a break to think about what I want and so on. But clearly this group of young people that we are studying and that we talk today, they have so much less opportunity for such yo-yos. So they are kind of after 23, they are kind of, or even before that, they are forced to make decisions, and important here that they make decisions that have strong impact over their lives in the future, because they cannot go back and forth.
Thank you very much, Meri. Anybody else would like to say something or ask a question?
I had a question. Thank you. Thank you very much for this interesting presentation. I had a question about the co-researchers. You said that you recruited co-researchers to do interviews. Did they participate in the data collection process, or did they participate also in the analysis, or did you involve them somehow in the analysis process? Because you identify these key issues that came up in this research, but how were they involved in the analysis as well, or like what was the level of their involvement in the project? Yeah.
That is, we mainly involve them for the data collection. So they participated, we consulted with them concerning the questions that what should be discussed with the young adults with whom they take interview. Then they kind of were very independent in a way for choosing whom to interview and what questions to emphasize and so on. But what we didn't do enough, I would say, was to involve them in the analysis. So what we did was, after when they had already taken all the interviews, we actually had an excursion with them. So we spent together a couple of days kind of discussing about these issues a lot, and then we ran a focus group discussion with them in which they were kind of able to share about their experiences of the process, also their interpretations in the meanwhile, and also to give some recommendations for the system. So that was basically kind of all a bit more kind of a reflective or analytical part of it, and that's something that I think that we should do next time better, because it would be wonderful to run, for instance, kind of working seminars or something like that to discuss the interpretations and so on. And what was kind of a very unfortunate that, as said, we had two regions. So before this COVID-19, we were able to do the first excursion and spend time with the first group of peer interviewers, but our plans were ruined because the borders went closed and so on. So there is still a chance for us to think about that after the situation becomes more ordinary again. So how shall we include those peer researchers in the second region to the analysis as well?
Great. Yeah, thank you very much. It's really good that you are including them as like experts, as you said in the presentation. And yeah, and there are some. I also tried to include my participants in the analysis, but there are language issues, like kind of the complexity of academic language, and it's really kind of. And also the COVID pandemic made it really difficult to organize these kind of workshops because of the digital divide. Many people are not connected to Zoom, or like they don't have internet connection. So it's kind of really becoming difficult to involve in the analysis. Yeah, that's.
And I think that you pointed out a crucial issue about the academic language. So those are not very easy questions to solve, that we are pretty much kind of educated researchers in the academia, and of course our kind of co-researchers would not necessarily have, or that's understandable that they wouldn't have the same skills. So it cannot be kind of academic peer-reviewed articles that you write with those people, but you should engage in other kind of reporting and publishing that is, as we all know, not that much encouraged in our academia nowadays, but you should go for certain kind of publications. And so I wouldn't say that that's the easiest kind of way to do research through this kind of a collaborative methods, but it is, if not easy, it's inspiring, and I think that I have learned a lot.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for this question and discussion, dear colleagues. I think we also, both not only we as audience, but you as researchers, learned a lot from this study that even the matter of planning for life planning is a very interesting temporality issue depending on social time, context of social policy, of generation. It's changing, I mean, in different generation, as it was also asked in previous question. And actually, also it's a matter of narrating about it, because when you ask, it creates also a special situation, interview situation of this communication of position of knowledge and of emotions. So it is also very interesting to see how this question is reflected in this very here and now situation. Yes, and it reminded me on the one sentence in John Lennon song. I will switch it on now.
Life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
So I would like to thank you very much. Now we have other sessions, other panels started, and many people, I think, switched there because they are moderating in other panels. Thank you so much. It was a great insight into this very important issue, methodologically and in terms of content of real life situation, and also about this construction of this issue in actually in philosophy and in sociology. I would like to see you, dear colleagues, in other panels, and I wish you very good Christmas time, holidays, and good evening today. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Happy
Bye.
holidays to everyone. And thank you. And
Thank
thank you for the Lennon song as well.
Yeah. Super.